Intel's high-end Socket 1700 CPUs have achieved a degree of notoriety, and might be at least partially responsible for the state Team Blue's currently in. Up until now, I've heeded the warnings of my fellow creators. Leave them be. Skip them. Don't recommend them to anyone, and certainly don't recommend buying them second-hand. Of course, you know what's better than a warning? A cautionary tale. At least for the beginning of their lifespan, the Raptor Lake CPUs were business as usual for Intel. They could channel a mammoth amount of electricity into churning out obscenely high benchmarks, and needed serious cooling to get the best out of them. But this wasn't abnormal behaviour. This is how Intel operated. Look at me, using the past tense already. Their K-series chips were always made to be pushed to the breaking limit. Except, as it turns out, that limit wasn't all that far. Chips were breaking with frightening ease, even at stock settings without any manual overclocks, and much of 2024 was spent trying to isolate the problem, diagnose a solution, and place appropriate blame. I'm not going to go diving back into the guts of this now year-old drama. Better creators than I have already covered this extensively, and many people, myself included, swore off making content about the cursed chips of the 13th and 14th generations. The problem with that is, these CPUs didn't go away. You can still buy them brand new, with matching motherboards whose BIOSes don't attempt to direct the power of a dying star through them. People who are less online are presumably still buying the things, and probably using them quite comfortably. You can also buy them second-hand, and that's what I did, and why this video is much shorter than I'd hoped. On hearing about their reputation for self-immolation, I would imagine that quite a lot of people who bought the 13900K were eager to get rid of them pretty damn sharpish, so it's not unreasonable for remorseful buyers to sell or exchange their Raptor Lakes at retailers like Sex, even though the price they offer is a lot lower than they originally cost. It's also not unreasonable to expect some shadiness. People whose CPU died, or at least began to become unstable, and who, for some reason, wouldn't or couldn't claim a warranty return from the place they bought it from. I guess someone didn't feel guilty about selling their known faulty CPU to a shop they hoped wouldn't look too closely at it, even though inevitably some poor schmuck would end up buying it. Which is where I come in. I bought the i9-13900K from Sex's website for £240. I set it all up in my MSI Torpedo Z690 with some Corsair DDR5 and an Arctic 280mm AIO, all powered by a 1200W Corsair PSU. I updated my BIOS, which certainly reframes the whole power limit thing. The previous version presents you with three options: the 253W stock cooler setting, the tower cooler setting, and the 4096W water-cooled setting. The new version removes the cooler recommendations and still has three settings, but the first two don't look all that different. Both are limited to 253 watts, but one is the Intel recommended limit and the other is the MSI performance setting. I didn't want to push my luck this early on, so I stuck with the Intel version, went into Windows and did a quick sanity check. The CPU-Z benchmark is a nice easy way of sticking 100% load on a CPU, so I started it up, soon shut it off again to disable a bunch of background tasks, and turned it back on. Within seconds, I was confronted with a thing I've never seen before, because I only recently switched to Windows 11, the black screen of death. So followed a day of experimenting. I tried different RAM, with XMP and without. I tried different voltages and different power limits, and reinstalled Windows, but was unable to find a usable fix. Some voltages worked for a while, some for longer or shorter, but eventually everything crashed. About the worst experience was with the voltage set to 1.2 volts, where Cinebench wouldn't even open half the time. I did eventually manage to finish a full 10-minute Cinebench run, as well as obtain some numbers from Geekbench 6 and Geekbench AI, but I didn't get round to actually testing any games. For some reason I couldn't install the GPU drivers at first, and I couldn't even reset Windows without throwing up an error message. By the time I'd completely reinstalled Windows from a flash drive, I'd run out of patience, and re-downloading the games is going to be a 2-day job anyway, so I resigned myself to making a much shorter, less useful video than I'd intended. There's always a risk involved when buying used. That's why I like buying from Sex, who might not have the best reputation, but at least they offer a warranty on everything they sell. When buying something like a 13900K, with such a sketchy history, the chances of you getting a bad example like mine is going to be much higher. This is a modern chip, and as we can see, it's a pretty powerful one, so the only way people are going to be selling them off this soon for a third of the retail price is if they're worried that it'll break, or if it already has. Bottom line, well, it's the same as the top line really. Don't buy secondhand 13th and 14th gen Intels, particularly K-series, at least unless you can do a stress test on it first. And categorically do not run a new or used Raptor Lake CPU on a motherboard without updating the BIOS first. Come back next week where I'll hopefully be testing something that actually works, and in, games this time. Thanks for watching, kindly do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you next time. Now, I guess I need to get a refund from the shop I bought it from. Not the first time I've asked for my money back after Sex